There is an intimate relationship between fear and truth, and in this video, I'm going to explore how they work together and enrich the quest that is life. Alienation as a concept has its root in politics, in Marxism. So it's the interesting idea that it might be natural for any individual to feel alienated by their surroundings, by the very way that society is constructed. There is something that prohibits connection and a sense of purpose and belonging. According to the website Mind Help, alienation is when a person starts to feel disconnected or cut off from their surroundings and the people around them. They withdraw or isolate themselves from others, including loved ones and society. They might feel distant and separated even from their own emotion. They go on to list the different ways in which people can be alienated, and we'll look at 7 signs of it and the underlying causes, such as being at odds with the culture in which you live. And for the purposes of this video and of special interest to me and the quest for truth, self estrangement and feeling disconnected from your own identity, thoughts, emotions, or values. 7 signs given are the following: feeling distant from your work, family, and friends, feeling helpless, experiencing a pervasive feeling that the world lacks purpose, struggling to approach and communicate with others, experiencing a heightened sense of unease, discomfort, or fear when interacting with others, and finally, displaying a tendency to reject or disobey rules or societal norms. However, what the theory of alienation rarely talks about is the fact that it might be accompanied by the call. These are my own signs, but let me share them with you. The first is feeling a nagging sense that you should be elsewhere. 2, experiencing unexplained attraction to something. 3, receiving signs and unusual synchronicities. 4, being unable to focus on living life as usual. Number 5, acting on impulse and being told you're acting out of character or unpredictably. 6, dreams, feelings of deja vu, or physical sensations when thinking about something. And finally, number 7, curious and sometimes sudden loss of interest in something that you formerly identified yourself with. The gift of alienation is that it prepares the ground to receive the call. It clears away the space within which you can receive the signs that lead you to your destiny. Alienation provides the discomfort necessary to spur someone to take action. And in the process of observing their own self estrangement, heal it. And the modality of healing, I would argue, is truth. Overcoming fear, using truth to expose where fear has impeded action that is in alignment with the true self. I've thought long and hard about this. What is this fear? I mean, we always have the primal fear of death. But maybe what's just above that and connected to it is the fear of isolation, because traditionally isolation was dead. If I'm sick, someone must tend to me and help me. So some of us feel this discomfort where we are, a call to be elsewhere and doing something else, and a sense that it's too frightening to make the jump from one to the other. There's a sense that, in fact, all will be lost, that we will jump into the void and it will just be space and it will just be hurtling down. But actually, for most of us, maybe all of us, this void is temporary. We may have to cross a desert, but there is life on the other side. There's an oasis. And we might have lost what we had, but only because we can't live two lives at once. We have to give up the life that we made in order to have the one that's aligned to the true self, and not the one that your parents or peer pressure and conventional wisdom built for you and you just compliantly installed yourself in. I believe that this fear and alienation and the call actually come as a pair. And to answer the call does mean to accept the death of a life that you built. And that does require courage. But the alternative is to stay in non committal situations, situations that you've disconnected from, but they just roll on, they just tick along. And this has a domino effect. This is according to Sonia Choquette, but that really struck me as having a lot of truth. That when we have non committal energy in one area of our life, the domino effect sort of spreads non committal energy to everything else in your life. Because if one area of your life is just something that you're able to tolerate by deadening yourself, the numbing effect will spread because the contrast between when you feel really alive and really yourself and this large sort of deadened part of your life becomes too painful. And so you actually start to avoid things that give you joy and pleasure because to come down from that, to deaden yourself to fit back into your daily routine is just too painful. I've experienced this in my own life, having vivifying conversations with alive and driven people in a place that I love, and then returning to a situation where all that I could say of it is just that it's fine. But what I've understood is that there isn't really a way around fear. Fear says, take your pick. You can face me and take a risk everything to be yourself, or you can choose social peace. But you'll soon learn that that social peace comes at a price. It's actually a false peace. It's Instead of the moment of daring and confronting a radical change, you'll get a lifetime of diffuse anxiety, of self avoidance, of self medication, and possibly of addictions, of fatigue, of lack of joy, of lack of energy. And we realize that we're still living with fear, but we could have had a big battle rather than death by a thousand cuts. This is where I think gratitude comes in. If, along with the terror in your heart, you can look at the risk in front of you and the call and feel a level of gratitude at this opportunity. Consider then the uses of adversity, the way that you've been issued a challenge and it doesn't always come along. It is a unique moment. It is a feeling that, like the character in the movie whose life is just blown off course and they have to accommodate themselves to doing things they never expected that they would have to do. But when they rise to it, and it's an invitation to the hero's journey. A person, let's call him Mark, is born into a family where his difference is made clear to him every day, in subtle and more overt ways too. He's excluded from events and then told, "Oh, we didn't think you'd be interested," which he accepts at first, but then begins to question uneasily. When he talks about his interests and plans, there's never any response other than comments like, "Well, if you're sure you think that's a good idea," or, "Well, why don't you do this, that, or the other instead?" While his siblings' ideas get enthusiastic engagement, hours planning at the kitchen table. He's pretty sure he's not adopted. He looks like everyone else. So why doesn't he feel at home then? If there's something wrong with him, why don't they just tell him straight? And why can't he identify what it is? He gets the feeling that he affects everything negatively because he's different, but everyone's too polite, too dutiful to acknowledge it. And so everyone has to pretend all the time. His siblings pretend that they're close in front of the parents, and the parents pretend that he's one of them. His siblings go on to carve out careers in respectable professions, and they go on to marry and have children, buy houses, and live prosperous, peaceful, and useful lives, not too far from where they were born. Mark's not sure what to study, and he picks something almost at random. He makes it through university, and then he leaves. He doesn't bother looking for a job. He decides to travel. He has a series of intense relationships that all fail. Time has revealed differences that can no longer be hidden. He is the black sheep, and he still doesn't know why. What invisible force is acting through him, making decisions that always lead him astray? He reflects on the irony of being called Mark when he's always missing it. He sinks further into isolation and unhappiness. He gets stuck in his mind, going over the same thoughts again and again, and he's unable to make any progress. Occasionally, he has some good periods where his depression lifts a little, and he plays music or goes for long solitary hikes. On one of these walks through nature, he gets the idea that maybe it's time to try something else. Maybe it's time to meditate and to pray. And so he begins. He doesn't notice a huge difference at first, but he's has the sense that he's been given a mission. He has the sense that he knows where to be directing his attention. And there are small movements of change. The first thing that he does that really changes is that he abandons the semblance of normality, and he gives up the struggle of trying to be like his brothers and sisters and just agrees to be whatever it is, no matter how poor it is, to be himself. He moves to Norway or Scotland, or maybe it's Finland, and buys a small piece of land. He discovers that he's good at working with the earth. Here, his sense of self and of everything else is strong. He wakes up pleased to be alive every morning, and on some occasions, he feels like his whole chest is filled with warm light. He gets a dog, makes some friends, falls in love with a mountain and a forest. Perhaps he even meets a woman quite late in life, and she has a child. And he realizes that all he did was take the long road to happiness. His siblings and many of his school friends took a shorter and straighter path. The depression he felt when he was younger makes sense to him now, and he sees the seasons of pain as stages in a quest. And while his life will contain challenges yet, he knows that he's never going to fall back into complete darkness, and that he's become someone resilient. And he has a store of life within him that he can draw upon. He observes the upheavals in society, the rumbles of war, the waves of emotional pain, the illusions cast by politics and ideologies, and he remains still and unafraid. He's integrated the understanding that all things change and that we can die and be reborn many times in the same life. His life is not a tragedy, nor a waste, nor a missing of the mark. It's a journey towards the center of things. As Plotinus said, the soul's natural movement is not in a straight line. On the contrary, it circles around something interior, around a center. And so when fear met truth, he was able to free himself and start to feel at home on earth. The end.